All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at the December 2024 meeting of the Oldham County Planning and Zoning Commission. I am Greg King, Chair. Before we get underway, if everyone would please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, and for everyone present, please also join me in muting those electronics for the duration of the hearing. First order of business will be approval of the October 22 minutes. Can we go ahead and get a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Ms. Jones, thank you. All right, changes, edits, updates. All right. We take refuge in your fine eye there, by the way, so thank you for that, right? All right, any discussion, guys? We'll move for approval by voice vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, like sign. And motion carries. Minutes are approved. All right, let's move into the docket. Ms. Edgar. All right, let me throw this to Ryan first. Hang on just one second. So, Ryan, what we have to begin with?
So the first docketed item was a waiver of an access easement with at 6,000 Old Grange Road. The attorney on that case has requested that we delay that hearing until January's meeting, so that will be removed from the docket today.
All right, and our protocol is, do we have to?
I'll make that motion.
Well, wait a second. Let's find out what kind of motion we're making. Oh. Are we going to lay this on the table, or is it just?
Do we have to lay that on
or is it just
or
delayed?
Table it, or can we just?
I think you'll leave it on the table and go from there.
Lay it on the table? All right, so motion on the floor. Mr. Douglas, was that your motion?
I'll make that motion to table it.
All right, and Mr. Hampton seconds. Many thanks. We'll go with discussion. Voice vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. And PZ-24-022 has been laid on the table. All right. All right, let's move into the first docket item. Ms. Edgar, will you please read the docket into the record? As soon as you read that. Mm-hmm.
Docket PZ-24-023. Application has been filed by JAMP Enterprises, LLC, for a zoning map amendment and development plan for a proposed family entertainment center located in between 1201 North Highway 393 and 3921 West Highway 146. The property is 2.23 acres and currently zoned I-2, heavy industrial, and the proposed zoning is C3, general business district.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And before we move into staff presentation, let's go ahead and get staff sworn.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Barge, you will have the staff's presentation today.
Anna Barge, Senior Planner. Get logged in. Okay, Anna Barge, Senior Planner. Today we're here for the zoning amendment and development plan with waivers for JAMP Enterprises, a family entertainment center on 393 in Buckner across from Oldham County High School. As Ms. Edgar just read, they filed for the zoning map amendment and development plan with 3 waivers, and I'll be going over that. And the property is 2.23 acres, currently zoned I-2 heavy industrial, and they're looking to change it to C3 general business district. So currently the land is undeveloped. I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with this area. It's just an empty, undeveloped lot, and that tax parcel is written there for you. So this is the approximate lines. We don't have that lot currently saved in our GIS, but I believe, and the attorney can clarify, that the borders actually go all the way down to this driveway, but he can clarify that for us. So currently it's zoned I2 on the right side of the road, and then R2 on the left side, with C3 in that bottom left corner. So there's no site history, but the actual case history. So they started with the pre-application meeting back in April of last year, with their neighborhood meeting in October, and TRC in October of last year. And then it was posted to the county website on November 4th. By the way, speaking of the county website, if y'all haven't seen it, we did get a new website. It's work in progress, but if y'all have any feedback, we would love to hear it. Adjoining property owner notices were sent on November 20th, before Thanksgiving, and then the public notice appeared in the Oldham Era on the 21st. And the sign was posted at the property by our fantastic code enforcement officer on November 26th. And here's the photo of that being posted. And these are Google Street View photos of the property. So you might notice an election sign here or there in the photo, which has hopefully been taken down. So again, site photos, and I have arrows in the bottom corner kind of showing the perspective of these photos. So the applicant is proposing a 19,267 square foot entertainment center on that 2.23 acre parcel next to the Clayton and Lambert Manufacturing Company. Like I said, they're looking to change the zoning from I2 to C3 to allow for the family entertainment center. Currently, that wouldn't be allowed under the I2 zoning. And the purpose of that C3 general business district is to provide the appropriate locations for a wide variety of businesses that's not characterized by extensive warehousing or frequent heavy trucking activity. So these notes go kind of into the waivers. So the first one is related to zoning ordinance 300-050, the vehicular use area perimeter landscape buffer area. A little bit of a large phrase, but shall be a minimum of 10 feet in width. The applicant is asking for a waiver of this regulation due to the existing sanitary sewer and drainage easement. And then the next one is zoning ordinance 300-060. Item 5, in vehicular use areas of 12,000 feet or more, 20 or more parking spaces, there should be a minimum of 1 island for every 10 spaces. You'll see on their plan that they would like to waive that for 2 specific locations. Then is lastly, zoning ordinance 170-020, the maximum impervious surface for that zoning for C3 specifically zoning is 65%. The applicant is requesting a waiver to allow for 69.9% impervious surface. So this is the plan presented. In summary, the applicant, Jamp Enterprises, is requesting the approval of the zoning map amendment to change those 2.23 acres from I2 heavy industrial to C3 general business. They're requesting the waivers for the required 10 vehicular use area perimeter landscape buffer area for a maximum and for a portion of the required interior landscape area for vehicular use areas for those 2 spots, and for maximum impervious surface. The applicant has also submitted a development plan for approval. So the first item for approval would be this zoning map amendment, and this would be a recommendation to Oldham County Fiscal Court. And these are the conditions of approval, which applies only to the plan presented today at the Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There should be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and the County Engineer's Office. The plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements, and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at the time of construction plan approval. So for the first waiver, they're asking for the waiver of that required 10-foot vehicular use area perimeter landscape buffer area because of the existing 15-foot sanitary sewer and drainage easement along that portion of the 393. And that's a state easement, I believe, and our county engineer can clarify if you have questions on that or other questions. And the potential conditions of approval is the waiver shall only apply to the plan reviewed at the December 10th, 2024 Oldham County Planning Commission hearing. So for waiver number 2, they're asking for a waiver of the required landscape area for the vehicular use area for those 10 spaces in 2 locations. And for the potential conditions of approval, it's same as the first waiver, that this waiver shall only apply to the plan reviewed today at the December 10th, 2024 Oldham County Planning Commission hearing. If they change their plans, they would have to come back. So for the third waiver, that's the maximum impervious surface. As you can see on the bottom part of the slide, the impervious surface requirement is 65%. So their proposed impervious surface is 69.9%. So their waiver request is that 4.9%. And the potential conditions of approval, same as the other 2 waivers, is that the waiver shall only apply at the plan reviewed at the December 10th, 2024 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. So lastly is the development plan. They're requesting approval of the preliminary development plan for the Family Entertainment Center. And then here are the conditions of approval. Applies only to the plan presented at today's December 10th, 2024 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. And again, there should be no changes without review of the Oldham County Planning Commission and our engineer's office. And the plan must comply with all federal, state, county ordinances and requirements and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at the time of construction plan approval. So I know that was a lot. So if y'all have any questions for me or for our county engineer, Jim Silliman, he's available.
All right, Mr. Silliman, do you have more to add? Yes, sir. Oh, good.
Good morning. As Anna mentioned, this came to TRC back in 2023. Is that correct? And at the time, it was a larger scale project and would have required KYTC traffic impact study because at that time the trips generated were greater than 100 peak hour trips. The current plan that they've provided, and we concur with this and have talked to the Transportation Cabinet, and they also concur that the current plan, based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers data, probably generates about 86 peak hour trips. So it falls below the criteria for a traffic impact study for both KYTC and Oldham County. However, it still is greater than the 20 peak hour trips that would be required by Oldham County for a traffic assessment, which is basically an abbreviated traffic impact study. So they did provide that traffic assessment, and based on it, it basically states that there's no mitigation to the roadway capacity necessary because of this development, and we would concur for several reasons. I'll say primarily because the proposed or future realignment of Kentucky Highway 393 will, I've drawn this black line in this aerial image. Please understand this is just me drawing some lines on here for visual effect. It's not the actual alignment, but it's close. So when 393 is realigned, it'll take a significant amount or volume of traffic off the current 393 that runs along the high school. So that's again why we feel that we agree that there's no changes necessary to the road. As far as schedule, this project with the Transportation Cabinet is currently planned to be let for construction bids a year after Allen Lane, realignment. Allen Lane is planned for fall of 2025. So we currently anticipate this realignment project to be fall of 2026 with construction, probably a construction season or more after that. It's a pretty large project, so timing-wise. This will, because it is a state route still, Kentucky Highway 393 would be a state route, it would still require a encroachment permit from the state. And we just noted on the plans that when they apply for that encroachment permit, there wasn't a culvert shown on this driveway. They should probably have one to convey water, stormwater under that. They also indicate a variable width access easement where the proposed drive appears to be on the neighboring property. We would require that that easement be recorded prior to start of construction. So we'll look at that during construction plan review if this is approved. Land disturbance is greater than 1 acre, will be greater than 1 acre. So of course they will be required to get their Kentucky Division of Water KYR 10 permit and the Oldham County Stormwater Quality Management and Erosion Control permit from my office. In doing so, they'll submit construction plans to our office for review. They'll be required to adhere to our requirements in that ordinance, which require they address stormwater detention or retention for the 2, 10, and 100-year storm. Since it will release to a state highway, they'd also be required to address the 25-year storm event. They've requested a waiver to the impervious surface. I believe 65% was the maximum. They're saying 69.9. That calculations will have to substantiate that their stormwater detention system can handle that additional impervious surface. So we'll analyze or review that during our construction plan review. And on this plan, they don't show, it's not apparent whether they're curbs, but in accordance with Oldham County regulations, they would be required to add curb around the perimeter of the parking, and that would assist in capturing that stormwater and getting it into the system appropriately. I did note that what they're proposing is a underground detention. It's less common in Oldham County to see this, typically because of the cost of the structures involved. Typically, we see the open detention basins or retention ponds. So when they submit construction plan reviews, we'll need to see that this system can accommodate those storms, and we'll also ask how the emergency overflow will handle it, because we typically ask for our consultants to show how if the structures, the outlet structures on a detention basin release, if they happen to get clogged in an emergency, how does it overflow? And it's a little bit different for an underground storage unit, so we'll have to see that. We also noted that they appear to be taking stormwater from the south, the site on the south, and taking it into their storm sewer system, which would go into that detention basin. I'd probably recommend if they could get it into the roadside ditch instead, so their detention system doesn't have to handle all that flow as bypass. That would be recommended, but that's something we'll look at a construction plan review. So that's actually all I have. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Silliman. Is that the end of staff's presentation?
I think so.
Okay. All right, commissioners, questions for staff? Mr. Hampton.
I know the chair will hopefully give me just a little leeway here. I heard the dates you gave on the state as
Yes,
far
sir.
as what they're going to do construction-wise.
Yes.
I'm sure you've got that in writing, correct?
Well, we have target dates in writing, yes.
Well, they've had a target date for 2 years
Yes,
already,
sir. Yes, sir.
correct?
Probably longer than that. But
Okay.
And,
I'm
I
just-
want to make sure, when I gave the dates, fall 25 was Allen Lane, and fall 26 should be 393.
Okay, but I'm just saying that's been an ongoing
That's
for
correct.
years already.
And it's been challenged with utility relocations, so,
As a resident of Buckner, trust me, I know.
yes, okay.
The traffic study, again, is done by people who don't live there. And for 3 hours a day, until they get this done, nobody's going to be able to get into this place. 3 hours a day. The traffic is that bad.
Well, and I'm familiar. My kids, both two sons, went to Oldham County High School. One of the things the traffic engineer is going to look at is peak hour, and I should probably let them answer this, but they typically look at the traffic that's coming into the development might not align with the rush hour of school, and so it all plays in. It's just part of the analysis. And
Okay.
I think you should probably ask them that.
That's okay. I just wanted to fuss at you a little bit.
Okay.
Is that all you have, Mr. Hamp?
Pardon?
Is that all you have?
Not really, but I'll
Okay, well,
stop.
keep going. You still got the floor.
Yeah.
No. This doesn't have anything to do with the development.
Okay.
I want to be sure.
Oh,
And I know
okay.
that's supposedly in the scope.
Well, I
but in
disagree.
reality,
I think it's in scope, so.
It's a huge problem.
And we have fiscal court and, Oldham County has been looking at the Kentucky Highway 146 traffic issues there and at Oldham County Middle School, and it is not advanced. You're correct.
Okay. We schedule our lives around different times of the day
Certainly.
down there. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hampton, all right. Mr. Marsh.
Somewhat along that same line. I saw a coffee shop and drive-through with a coffee shop. That would be the same basic time as school coming in, especially in the mornings. There's an impact there. And then I'm looking at the in and out of the coffee shop. It does not look conducive on the 393 for school traffic.
Okay. And again, so the coffee shop, and I know some people get, Starbucks in Crestwood is busy all day long, not just morning traffic, but you're right, it does contribute to morning traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. And the in and out there needs to, I think, be looked at very closely.
And that'll be, again, that would have to be approved by the Transportation Cabinet. Their permits division would have to approve the alignment of that entrance, or entrances, both of them.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Marsh? You good? Mr. Douglas?
Morning, Jim.
Good morning.
I believe I asked Anna this, but I'll ask the applicant also, but I'm sure you reviewed their traffic assessment. On her conclusion, and I see Mrs. Zimmerman's not here, it said, based upon the volume of traffic generated by apartments. I mean, how authenticated, I mean, I'm sure this is just a template she used, but, I mean, I've not read everything yet to see, but
Well, I
Did
didn't
you
catch
notate
that.
that
I'm
with
sure that's
her?
just a typo.
Okay.
Because again, I checked more of the numbers. I did look and again, compare what they have listed on their current plan areas, and I think the 86 peak hour trips was reasonable.
well, I guess her analysis was, it states the 2003 volume was 9,850 vehicles per day in 2003.
Can I grab that study and look at it?
Sure.
also?
And that's in page
What page are
7.
you on?
Page 7.
Okay.
It says, the major thoroughfare plan reported in 2003, Kentucky 393 was operating at level service E. The 2003 volume was 9,850 vehicles per day. But now she says in 2024, like, we've had no growth, or I don't know, her assumption is it's estimated to only be 7,400. It's like we lost 2,300 vehicles a day, and
Yeah,
That
I'll
just
have
doesn't
to
make
check that,
sense,
and
does it?
I think I was focusing more on and highlighted the next sentence, which discusses
I mean,
the realignment. No, you're right. You're correct.
it's not right. So the assessment's not right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Anyone else? Questions? Mr. Marsh?
I believe this one's for Anna, please.
Yes.
Do we have any regulations regarding how close to the high school there's alcohol serving permits, and what is that just from?
I'm going to let Mr. Fisher answer this question.
So there are, and you put me on the spot now, and I can't remember the number, but it goes from the front door of the school. And so essentially the distance that's required gets to the parking lot. And the police department, as well as the judge executive's office, are the ones responsible for issuing alcohol licenses and things of that nature. So they would check into that. So, and the gentleman walking in the room now may have an answer to that as well.
Nothing like getting put
Yeah,
on
we
the
can
spot.
put him right on the spot
Right on. Oh, he's
about alcohol.
Welcome, Mr.
specifically.
going to sit in the back row.
Okay, for our information, though, there is a ordinance for that.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
All right, other questions? Other questions, Ms. Nasser, please.
So the first waiver indicates a waiver regarding the current sanitary sewer and drainage easement. On that map you were showing, can you show me, is that on the front of the property along?
Yeah, they've got it
The main-
mapped. Along here.
Okay.
Let's see if I you can kind of see the tail of it says easement here.
Okay.
And the arrows point, it appears to point to a contour line. I'm not sure where that line actually is, so I think their surveyor or engineer can clarify that better, but it is along this front.
Great, thank you.
All right, additional questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move into presentation from applicant. Mr. Swansburg?
While I'm pulling this up, Mr. Chairman, Mike Swansburg here with the law firm of Swansburg and Smith, 117 West Main Street here in LaGrange. And for Mr. Fisher's benefit, that's just right across the street from the ongoing project that is the courthouse.
Very well. Will you have others testifying today as well?
I will, yes, sir.
Let's go ahead and get them sworn, okay?
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Mr. Fisher, Ms. Edgar, Mr. Combs, Mr. Baxter as well. Good to see you. Welcome back. Good morning, everybody. Here on behalf of JAMP Enterprises LLC, who is the applicant in this particular project. I decided to go with red today. I thought it would be a nice little potential holiday theme. I heard discussion about U of L volleyball. I don't want to say that's U of L because I'll end up getting voted no by all the UK fans here for the same thing. So it is a holiday thing for me. Wanted to stand that out there, and it's really nice red discussion here on behalf. I do want to go into some of the discussion that the staff's already talked about and potentially address some of the questions that have also been raised about numbers 2003 to 2004 in terms of traffic, et cetera, as we go along here as well. So again, start off with the ask. Why am I here? Why are we here, generally speaking? And that is because we are asking for this body to approve a development plan and some additional requests for an entertainment center that's located or potentially located along Kentucky Highway 393 in Buckner to convert the property that we've been talking about here, and you've already seen some photos of that open space, to this, which you've got a big sheet in front of you and is also here on the screen, and you've seen it this morning here through the staff presentation. This is the entertainment center that we talked about. This is an entertainment center that's actually been talked about for more than a year at this point. As we've already seen, the initial meetings occurred in April of last year. We had TRC almost or more than at this point a year ago. And during that time frame, and I'll talk a little bit about that, what the applicant has done is taken a lot of information and a lot of suggestions from the public, from staff, and from other sources, and then reincorporated it into the proposal that we have here today. So it is different from what has been discussed in the past. It is smaller. It has a different theme to it, if you want to say, and I'll get into that here in a second. But overall, we think that this is a good proposal for Oldham County, and we'll go ahead and walk through our request for this morning. So first thing we're going to talk about is the zoning map amendment request. Again, I always start off with what's the guiding standard here for this body and for anyone else. State law provides that before a map amendment is granted, the Planning Commission must find that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan, or in the absence of such a finding, that one or more of the following apply. And in this case, I would argue subsection B, that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved, which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan, which have substantially altered the basic character of the area. And again, that's KRS 100.213 sub 1B for everyone's benefit. Here is a screenshot of the Oldham County Comprehensive Plan, at least the cover. I've identified for you all this morning some provisions that we believe are impacted by or are consistent with this particular project within the comprehensive plan. And that would be, first, and this is only an example, I can actually go into others, but I pulled 3 of them, for example, for this morning. Land use objective LU-1-3, which relates to the development in areas with existing infrastructure and services. You've already seen on the map, there's a whole bunch of development around this particular property. You've got Clayton and Lambert facility. You've got the high school across the street. You've got commercial development down on 146. There's a gas station there as well. There's now, although it's not reflected on the GIS map, there's actually now an orthodontics office just north of this property as well. So there is development that has already been around there. We would argue that the infrastructure and services in that area has already been built in, and we're simply adding on to that existing infrastructure and those services. Second one, land use LU-1-3 sub 3, which encourages development priority as reflected in the future land use map. I don't have it actually on this slide, but if you look at the future land use map, I believe ultimately the property we're talking about, I think, is actually going to be converted to a commercial or anticipated as a commercial. That is always, of course, subject to change by recommendations of this body, by the fiscal court, et cetera. So our understanding is that in terms of future, the industrial site would ultimately be a commercial site. So we're taking the position that this is going to be consistent with a long-term vision for the county as well. Business and industry objective BI-1-2 sub 1, which encourages the highest and best use of existing industrial and commercial land through flexible land development regulations. So in this case, what I would argue and what we would submit to you all is that there's an existing industrial site that, for lack of a better term, doesn't do what it used to do. It's a big factory that doesn't produce anything anymore, to the best of our knowledge. At this point, it's a storage facility as far as we know. But what they're wanting to do with that is to develop the land around that. As you see, 393 is going to be redirected. That area of Buckner is also growing as far as we can tell. And so what we're talking about is, let's put a project there, a development there, that we think is a great use of the property for this county. And so, again, encouraging the highest and best use of existing industrial and commercial land. This is an industrial space that we would like to make a commercial space instead through this particular proposal. So those 3 areas we would submit are consistent with this particular project, and that the project ultimately meets with the plan. So again, back to the development plan. What are we talking about here at the end of the day? And this is, I think, important part. And I think it's important for the public and for this body. What we're talking about here is creating an entertainment center. Well, what does that mean when you say an entertainment center? Well, in this case, what we're talking about is an entertainment center that encompasses a significant number of pickleball courts, which is a significantly or fast-growing sport here in the United States and, quite frankly, around the world. It incorporates a pickleball court area, also incorporates an outdoor game area, outdoor lawn play area, in addition to, as we've already talked about a little bit, this turnaround here, the cafe, with the drive-through purpose as well. There's a playground on here. So there's a lot of open space that is incorporated as part of this, but it is what we would like to call entertainment forward, right? The idea being here that at the end of the day, families can come and they can play pickleball, they can play in this outdoor lawn space, they can get food, for example, they can get drink, and they can spend time here in Oldham County. They don't have to go to Jefferson County for this purpose. They don't have to go to Jefferson County for this purpose, which I think is an important part, and I talk about it at the very end. Oldham County is a great bedroom community. It's a fantastic community to live in. But a lot of people talk about, what do we do here other than eat and sleep? I work maybe in Jefferson County. I work in Oldham County. I may work in Shelby County as well. But a lot of people at this point, from what we have heard, desire to have something that also allows them to stay here for entertainment purposes. And what we're proposing is a family-friendly option for them right here in Oldham County. So this is what we're talking about when we say the development plan at the end of the day. I've got an alternative argument, just in case that one doesn't work for you all. And at present, the property sits adjacent to that Clayton and Lambert factory that we talk about. JAMP purchased the property from Clayton and Lambert because the latter, again, no longer uses it as a factory to manufacture products, and because its own property will be impacted by KYTC's plan to reroute 393 around the other side of its property. So this is a discussion with Clayton and Lambert to find a good use of its property, knowing that that area is going to be changing. It's supposed to be changing, right? Fall of 2026 is what we're hearing at this point. It is supposed to be changing. And so they're looking for ways to utilize that space because it doesn't do what it used to do. And so that we would argue that is a change in the social or economic or other purposes that reflects why now we're talking about making this proposal today. And that again would fall under, like we talked about, state law that, and as we've already gone over. So again, change of the Oldham County zoning map. What we're talking about, the current designation is I-2. We would argue it's outdated, again, because of what the factory there actually does or does not do, and that a C3 designation is more appropriate for this property. You've already seen, by the way, down in the bottom corner, there's already been C3, so it's not entirely out of character for a C3 designation to be in this location. Purpose of C3 has already been discussed, but just for reiteration, is to provide for appropriate locations for a wide variety of businesses, commercial, mass merchant, and miscellaneous service activities, but does not include land uses characterized by extensive warehousing or frequent heavy trucking activity. And we don't have that here as part of this proposal. And so we believe that this proposal fits within that C3 designation, and we would ask this body to, consistent with state law, consider amending the map and proposing that to fiscal court from I-2 to C3 for this purpose. So let's talk about the waiver requests. Ms. Barge has already done an excellent job of talking about those. I want to go into a little more depth from our perspective on this. First, again, pursuant to Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance Section 300-110 sub 4, this is an enabling provision that allows this body to provide for waivers. We're asking for a waiver of Section 300-050 related to that vehicular use area perimeter landscape buffer area, right? That big, long word becomes an acronym VULBA along KY Highway 393 from 10 to 0 feet. I'm going to ask the engineer to talk a little bit about that here in a second, just for everyone's benefit. But Commissioner Nasser, you were asking about that, and it is on the map here. It's kind of hard on this particular image, but on the bigger ones you all have, you can see where it is discussed, at least in terms of the existing right-of-way and easement. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. The second one is, and highlighted by the circles here, these are the two areas that we're talking about. A waiver of Section 300-060 related to the requirement of placing an island between every 10 parking spaces to allow spaces, in this instance, of 12 parking spaces between islands. There's one there and there's one there. And 11 spaces on another area of the site. There's one here, and then the space up here as well. So there's 11 spaces between here. There's 12 spaces between here. We're just simply asking this body to grant a waiver so that we can have 12 and 11 here as opposed to 10 and 10 with additional islands. Let's talk about them specifically. So again, and I'm going to ask Carl Lenz to come up here in a second and talk a little bit more about this from his perspective as well, or to answer any questions that you might have. But again, in support of the request, when we're talking about a waiver of the 10-foot requirement, what we would argue is that strict compliance would create an undue hardship due to the existence of a 15-foot sewer easement along the portion of the property's frontage on KY 393, as well as a right-of-way of Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, right? So they have an existing easement and an existing right-of-way that already is here. Why is that a problem? Because you can't have overlapping easements. You can't have an easement for the 15-foot sewer line and sewer easement that we're talking about, and on top of that have our 10-foot buffer over top of that. So what we're asking this body to do is give us a waiver because of the existing conditions of the property. And what I would also submit is that as a practical matter, this isn't going to impact the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Oldham County. Why do you have the buffer? Because you want to ensure that you're not over paving everything, right? And so that you're not, and it also prevents stormwater from going all over the place, creating massive havoc for drivers, for pedestrians potentially. And what we would submit is that there's going to continue to be significant green space in these areas here along the border with Kentucky 393 as part of this property. And again, we've talked a little bit about stormwater retention and the plan that the applicant has for doing that, quite frankly, probably to a little bit more of their fiscal detriment and versus having an open space retention pond of some kind. So we would submit that it does not have an impact on the health, safety, welfare of Oldham County, and that it would create an undue hardship if we are not allowed to do this and have this particular buffer here, because again, there's just not enough space. There just isn't the space for both at the same time, and they cannot overlap. Carl, do you want to talk any more about that? Is there anything that I missed? If you want to come on up and say your name and address.
Carl Lentz, LJB Inc., they're the civil engineers for the project, 12800 Town Parkway, Suite 201, Louisville, Kentucky. Just add a little bit what Mr. Swansburg said. Yeah, the sewer line, there's actually a force name next to it that runs the 15-foot easement along the front of the property. Like I said, I don't believe this have any type of adverse effect on any of the health and welfare of the neighborhood, because it's still a green space. It's still going to be green. And like I said, we're just asking for the relief of the overlapping easements is pretty much what it is. And in regards to the waiver for the parking, we've been dealing with this for about a year, and the site has shrunk, substantially from where we were before. And we were actually at some off-site parking, different stuff. So we've tried to come in to compliance with the parking regulations, and we have the correct LBA requirements as far as the landscape buffer area, interior landscape areas. And we're, like I said, we're requesting the 2 areas for the waiver for the islands. We'll still have plenty of trees. The landscaping will be per the Oldham County ordinance, and I'll be working with the planning and zoning on that. And with regards to the stormwater, the site will have curbs, underground detention. I'll be working with Mr. Silliman on that, moving the project forward. If you have any other technical questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
And Carl got a little ahead of me on this, but just again to reaffirm in terms of the waiver request about the parking spaces, strict compliance would create undue hardship. So what we've got a situation here is you've got competing interests, right? So as part of a parking, when you build a parking lot here in Oldham County, you want to ensure that it's not just blacktop and that's it. One, it's not aesthetically pleasing, and 2, again, you have this problem of stormwater runoff, and so the county has decided that 10 spaces in between islands is an appropriate designation, which we agree with. In this case, we've got that interest competing also with the interest of ensuring that we have enough spaces for anyone who might show up to this place without having to go into any type of adjacent land, any neighbor's property for that purpose. And there was some discussion a year ago. with the property owners about potentially having overflow parking that would be off-site. But that was, again, when there was a bigger project, a bigger footprint overall, and we had fewer parking spaces at that point. So what we're trying to do with this, again, is maximize the parking that we have on site to ensure that people are not having to go into neighboring lots or park on the street, for example, or potentially go across the street into the high school and park over there and walk across. We want to keep it contained as much as possible, and that's why we're asking you all to consider a waiver of that particular request. Ultimately, what we're talking about is 3 total parking spots more than what we could do under the existing regulatory scheme. So we're only talking about 3 additional parking spots overall. Last waiver. So the third one, we're talking about this impervious surface maximum requirement. So for Under section 170-2020, no more than 65% of a C3 zone may constitute impervious surface. Generally, what does that mean? That means paved surface, right? I mean, for that's the best way to describe it. Impervious surface is essentially paved surface or covered surface of some way. And what we're asking the commission to consider at this point is an increase of that maximum by only 4.9%. We're not talking about another quarter of the entire property. We're not talking about a massive amount here. We're talking about 69.9 versus 65. So what we would argue is that, again, although it is in fact it does exceed the maximum amount, we would argue that it's a de minimis amount in the grand sense, and that is what we're ultimately asking for, so that we can encompass the space that we're talking about with the parking lots, and keep, again, everybody contained within one particular site. In support of this, again, what I would argue is that strict application would deprive JAMP of the reasonable use of the land. What it would have to do is have to go back and revise everything, potentially losing, if not having to get rid of some of the proposed ideas for the entertainment center itself. Because you'd have to cut into the space that has already been designed as part of the development. And again, the land's location adjacent to the Clayton and Lambert factory, which is on this designation, is actually here. And there's actually, for your benefit, so the property actually goes in, this property right here, this little peninsula, for lack of a better term, actually continues to be Clayton and Lambert's property. So that our property actually goes here, down, and back up again. So there is, again, the adjacency to Clayton and Lambert's factory and their existing structures creates a unique situation that's outside of our control. We would submit that doesn't harm the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Oldham County. It's a de minimis request. And also remember, as part of this, it's an entertainment venue that we're talking about as part of that impervious surface that is going to be open space. It's not going to just be one massive building structure. There will be buildings, and there will also be this open space where you're going to have entertainment venues, again, games, for example, playground, et cetera. So it's not just one big box that's going to be sitting on there as well. The design also will continue to include ample landscaping throughout the entirety of the project. So that is what we're asking in terms of the third waiver request. Other issues. So I want to go ahead and get into something that has come up in the past, and I want to go ahead and address it here. It's a bit of a, what, for lack of a better term, white elephant in the room, and I want to talk about it today, and that is alcohol. Okay. At the Technical Review Committee hearing, and then afterward, there was a lot of discussion about alcohol as part of the initial plan. And at that time, what I would submit to you is that the plan was probably more alcohol forward. There was a brewery concept originally that was going to be part of this process. It was going to be a brewery, there was going to be a cafe, there was going to be open space in the middle at this point. That is not the proposal that we are seeking anymore. The alcohol forward concept that was there before is not the project we are asking this body to approve today. What happened over the last year, as I already mentioned before, since TRC, is that the applicant has received input from a lot of different sources, publicly, privately, within their own, reconsidering the proposal, with them, external partners coming in, talking again more about this pickleball concept, which has really exploded again in the last year or two, I would submit, and revised it. They revised the proposal so that now, as I mentioned earlier, it's entertainment forward. It is not alcohol forward. There will not be the brewery that we talked about. They're going to focus more on the creation of those pickleball courts we talked about, the outdoor lawn and game section. But I don't want to hide anything from you all. The applicant does envision that there would be alcohol here, except that it would be in conjunction with food, just like any restaurant facility might have in this county. TGI Fridays, Applebee's, I'm using some arbitrary designations of places you might go. You don't go there because you're necessarily going to go for the drinks, you're going for the food. And you might also buy an alcoholic drink while you're there, because we're not unmindful of the fact that there are people in this county who do like to do that. But it is not the focus of this project anymore. The entertainment and the family-friendly component to it is the focus of this project moving forward. So again, there will be food. You can see there was a kitchen on there in addition to the cafe. There will be food as part of that, so you can go and you can buy food while you're playing games with your kids or your spouse or your friends. And there will also be alcohol that could be consumed as part of that. But again, it's just a component part to the project. It is not the actual focus anymore. And for everyone's benefit, and we talked about it a little bit, the applicant, of course, will certainly subject itself and follow all the requirements of the Kentucky Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control and the county in terms of all licenses and requirements of providing alcohol on a premises of any kind. That's certainly something that we will continue to be mindful of and absolutely adhere to. Again, talk about the development plan. Thing I didn't put on the slide, but I did want to talk about that didn't come up before in the last year is that the potential employment opportunities for students who might be across the street or otherwise. So again, part of the location on this may give some people concern, but it also provides, I would submit to you, an opportunity for people who might be looking for part-time jobs to work in a close proximity to the school as well. They're not necessarily going to be serving alcohol. Of course, there's state law that prohibits that. But they could actually be working at the entertainment center as well on a part-time basis. So I would submit that's another advantage of having the location, having this particular plan, is it gives an opportunity also for employment for individuals, including students potentially as well. I mentioned this before. I just want to reiterate it again. Oldham County, it's a great place to live. I don't live in Oldham County. It is a great place. I'm envious of the people who live in Oldham County. I would move if I had the choice. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. I do have that choice. One concern that has come up to the applicant, and we've heard via the public and otherwise, is that there isn't necessarily a place to go here in Oldham County for family, for entertainment purposes. You have to go to Jefferson County for this. You have to go to Jefferson County for the most part. And what we would submit to you is that this proposal helps fulfill a noticeable gap in what is otherwise one of the best places to live and work in this state. And that's why we're here today, ladies and gentlemen, to ask for your approval on that. So a summary of our request before I stop talking and sit down. Again, is approve the amendment of the zoning map from the property from its current I-2 designation to C3, to grant a waiver of section 300.050 related to the vehicular use area perimeter landscape buffer area, the VULBA, as we talked about, from 10 feet to 0 feet. Grant a waiver of 300.060 related to the requirement of an island for every 10 parking spaces, so that those two areas we talked about would be 12 and 11, just 3 more spaces. And then grant a waiver set forth in section 170.020, so that 69 and 9/10% or 69.9, just 4.9% above the maximum standard, may constitute impervious surface for this particular project. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm done with my presentation. I appreciate your indulgence, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you all might have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Swinesberg. Anyone else present wishing to speak in favor of this application? All right. Seeing none, we will please approach the podium. Let's get your name and address, get you sworn in.
Hello, I'm Matt Hogan with Pickleville LLC. I'm actually one of the gentlemen who's been working with.
Your address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say it. I've never done this before. Louisville, Kentucky, 5307 New Cut.
Good to go.
Okay. Matt Hogan, Pickleville LLC. I've been in business for about going on the 3rd year. I design and handcraft pickleball paddles out of Louisville.
I'm sorry. We got to swear you. Got to swear you in. Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Sure.
Last interruption, I promise.
All right. Okay. No worries. So my concept is currently a e-commerce brand who handcrafts and designs pickleball paddles. It's been very successful in Louisville, in the region. I do a lot of business in Cincinnati, and have entered the South Florida market with actually the help of a couple of my friends who were born and raised in Oldham County. I am a Louisville resident. However, Oldham County has been a big part of my life. My sister married her husband. They've lived in Oldham County for about 20 years or so. 2 nieces, 1 nephew who's graduated from Oldham County High School. So I'm very, very affluent with the area in which this property is proposed. Been to a lot of basketball games, a lot of football games. I can't speak to the building aspect and all the codes that you guys are discussing this morning, but what I can speak to is the opportunity with the pickleball structure that we plan to organize and implement there with leagues and so forth. My background previously is a regional buyer with CarMax, with organization, buying cars, allocating them. More recently, over the past 12 years, as a trauma nurse and travel nurse across the country during COVID and so forth. It presents a great opportunity. I know a lot of people in the community surrounding the ideas and feedback and impact with pickleball and just having something else to do. Not living in Oldham County, I know Oldham County well enough to know that if you guys don't want to leave Oldham County to go do something, you'd rather not. So I do know that this would be a great opportunity for us to be able to implement, engage kids, create pickleball clubs, create more healthy, active lifestyles to try to help implement, that type of activity. And even adults, everyone up here can play pickleball. That's one of the great things about it. We can have all types of leagues. We can have all types of age group leagues, participation, and a high level of engagement. And the great thing about pickleball is, to opposed to like other bowling leagues or volleyball, sand leagues and stuff like that, they're not real big drinkers, So I know that's the white elephant in the room, as mentioned prior, but they're not going to sit around and drink a bunch of alcohol just to go play pickleball. It doesn't go hand in hand, typically. Will they eat and drink after playing? Sure, probably. But they're not going to hang out there and fester and drink a bunch of beer and just chum it up playing pickleball. That's not really the demographic of player or the, I would say, the model and demographic of customer that we would want to create for the family center. So that's pretty much all I have, but if you guys have questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Mr. Swansburg.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, there was a point raised, and it didn't occur to me until I sat down. There was a discussion about the traffic assessment, 2003 versus 2024 in Oldham County and growth. One of the points that I did want to highlight for everyone to think about is that North Oldham High School opened in 2003. And so it's actually not entirely unreasonable to think that a significant portion of Oldham County High School's population actually went up to the northern part of the county and stayed there, hence the reduction in the number actually in Oldham County High School on 393. So I just wanted to point out that there is also an explanation for why, because a new high school opened and the number of students also moving up to that high school, it potentially impacted that. I don't have data to back that up. I only have, Mr. Douglas, I do, but I do want to make sure that that was noted, and that potentially is a reason why that could be the case also. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Swansburg. All right, move into the next phase of the hearing, that is questions of those opposing the application, testimony and question by those who are opposed to the application. For each of you who wishes to provide testimony, we'll ask name and address as you approach the podium and get you all sworn in at this time. Looks like you're standing alone. Okay. Let's get your name and address for the record.
Get it? I just want to get my stuff
Yes, sir.
settled before it falls off. My name is Blake Hazelton. Address is 2644 Sheffield Court, LaGrange, 431.
Let's get you sworn real quick, okay?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
To the best of my knowledge and belief, I do.
Thank you.
I just want to share a little bit of background because I think it's a little relevant of the amount of time that I've spent in this area, in the Buckner area. I served as in a number of different positions at Oldham County High School, and I recognize several of you as former parents and supporters and boosters and graduates, et cetera. And so I'll just say that I started as a teacher there and spent 5 years as a teacher, 5 years as athletic director, 4 years as a counselor, director of guidance. Also on that campus, director of people personnel, which was attendance guidance and health services for 4 years. I went back to Oldham County High School as principal for 6.5 years, and then served as superintendent for 13.5 years, again, all on the Buckner campus, and retired from that position in 2005. My main interest here today is not to represent the school district. It's to represent the experience that I had with the school district and also as a grandparent of 4 grandsons, one of whom is on that campus now, and 3 more will be on that campus in the future. So that's my interest regarding the GAMP proposal. I have several questions that might be of interest, and then several thoughts to share. I want to go address Mr. Hampton's comment about 393 extension and Jim's comments about it going through. And I recall in my Wayback Machine a meeting that I attended in the home ec department at Oldham County High School in 1988, where we met with the Kentucky Department of Transportation about an extension of 393 around the backside of Clayton Lambert. Okay, that was 35 years ago. And so as I look at this project, I think it's a real tight project to begin with, and it has to be to fit on this planned use of the property. But as I look at it, it may be a good idea and it may be a good concept, but not at this location. It needs to be on the other side when the 393 project goes through. It seems to me like that would be an ideal spot on that bypass going around Clayton Lambert to put something like this. But for this, I think if we go back and pull up the diagram that you have in your report, if you would, I think that it's got some issues with that campus, mainly being that it's. Let me get off of this. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you.
I knew it wouldn't last long. Look at the overhead map.
That one.
No, the one earlier in your presentation. Yeah, the one that
Oh,
has
okay.
it right on the road.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Jim. There you go. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you. You notice how close to the road 393 this proposal is. And the best way I can describe it is it's going to be an attractive nuisance to that campus. On that campus, you currently have Oldham County High School right across the street. And that building in the upper left is OCHS. There used to be 2 entrances to that parking lot on the front facing 393, and the highway department asked us to take one off, trying to reduce entrances and exits off 393, not add to them. The schools, Oldham County High School, Oldham County Middle School, Buckner Alternative School, Buckner Elementary School, Arvin Education Center, Technology Center, and the daycare are there, the Little Colonel Daycare. So you've got an abundance of schools and attendant traffic with it, not only student traffic. Whoops. I got to get this. No, I've got to get this over here. Yeah, there you go. It might be of interest to know that we were parking back in 1988, 700 cars on that campus. And that was student traffic cars, and that was faculty and staff cars. And now there are 3 different times when a lot of that traffic is out. It's the morning traffic coming in, which most all of you are familiar with. It's the afternoon traffic going out. You also have traffic coming for extracurricular events, games, etc., throughout the course of the week at night. But the other traffic that's occurring and has for the last 5 years is Arvin Center traffic with students going to co-op and going to JCTCS and going to other activities outside of school that generate even more traffic there. So I would agree with the comments that, you really can't put much in traffic counts or traffic studies. Although I know Ms. Zimmerman follows a formula and does a nice job with that formula, this is a different and unique scenario when you've got a 2-lane highway there that is not going to get any larger. And it's especially not going to get any larger if you start waiving requirements and easements that are right on the border of the land there. So I have 3 points. One is I think the current zoning, industrial, is appropriate. I don't think appropriate zoning changes to C3 would be merited in this case. In your packet that came from staff, it's a staff report, there's an item on page 8 that shows general business district uses. And there are a couple of them on there that I think would be of interest. One is an adult entertainment center. Not a family entertainment center, but an adult entertainment establishment is what it says. Firework sales, both permanent, ancillary, and seasonal. And then eating establishments of any kind. And I haven't been in the restaurant business, but I know people that have. And if they aren't generating about 50 to 60% of their profits from alcohol sales, they're not going to be in business very long. And so I appreciate the presentation. I expected them to say, we're not going to have alcohol sales. It's not in the application. What they're telling you today is the intent of the owners, developers of this property, do intend to get into alcohol sales with a restaurant. Not a snack bar, but a restaurant. Whether that'll be drive-through alcohol sales or sit-down alcohol sales, would yet to be determined. So I think I-2 is the appropriate zoning. We don't have enough I-2 in Oldham County right now. We continue to convert property to residential. And we know from past studies and experiences that we don't have the capacity to handle all residential in Oldham County. JAMP Enterprises is actually out of Dallas, Texas. They're not local. They work with a Weber group out of Sellersburg, Indiana, and they have representatives here. They have had an architect as a principal involved in this design, and I have to commend that he's got a lot packed into that area. I don't think there's any question about that. You have 2 added entrances on 393, one that you can show on this map, and the other one right across from the entrance to Oldham County High School, I believe. I have concerns with that additional traffic. I also have concerns that we've had experiences in the past with students who have had their parking privileges revoked at OCHS. I don't see anybody nodding, so it must not have been any of your kids, but you know some. And how they dealt with that was they went across the street and parked across the street and then ran across 393 to get to campus. And so we had some discussions about that, and the owner of the property did make some modifications. He raised his prices to park, thinking that would be a deterrence for students who lost their parking privileges. And they lost their parking privileges for moving violations. Okay, they actually were either speeding or something in Oldham County. It was reported to the police. The police then notified us, and we pulled their parking privileges for a 9-week period of time. It was very effective. Prior to that, we had 9 students killed in traffic accidents in the prior 5 years in Oldham County, and all of them were moving violations. Several of them were passengers in cars that were driven that ran into a tree or whatever, or another vehicle. And after that, the next 5 years, we lost no students in moving violations. Now, some of that obviously was not due to revoking parking privileges, but it did cause some thought, I think. And my point there, I don't want to belabor the point, but my point there is if you have parking across the street, and there's a lot of parking in this area established, you're going to have kids running back and forth. You're going to have them running back and forth to the family entertainment center. I don't think they'll be over there playing pickleball, but I don't know what they'll be doing over there, but it'll be an attractive nuisance, as I would claim it. The second thing, or rather the third thing, and I'll be done, is this whole issue of variances and waivers. You have a comprehensive plan, and you have those standards set for a reason. But it seems like frequently you have people coming in and saying, well, we have this project that'll only work if you make this adjustment for us. And I think that's problematic. I think if you're going to have those, then you ought to just say, let's hear your proposal, and we'll make a decision based on your proposal rather than on any variances or exceptions to standards that we have. I think I'm about done for now, but want to thank the staff who have been super responsive, very accommodating, Ms. Edgar especially, very accommodating when I show up over there without any kind of an appointment and provide documentation or request. They represent you extremely well, very competent, and I think that they represent, again, what you want in the community as something that's a model. I think I'm going to stop there for now, but I anticipate I may have a few closing comments. Thank you very much for your time, and thank the commission for your service to the community. I know that this is a service that you're providing and trying to make our community better, and that you have a focus on the quality of life in Oldham County. And that's really why I think we're all here, is quality of life issues. And so I hope you make the appropriate decision on this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hazelton. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone else present? All right, commissioners, next step up is questions from you. And before that, just to check to see how we're holding up. Do we need to take a short break before we move into? I get some nods here. Let's take 10 minutes and we'll circle back, okay? Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We'll come back to order now. We'll open the floor for questions from the commission of those who've provided testimony thus far. So who has questions? Mr. Falvey.
Sir.
Commissioner Falvey, what we're going to do is all three of us are going to come up just in case all three of us can answer, and that way we're not going back and forth and wasting everybody's time. So
Works for me.
we're going to have all of us come up, and the best answer will get in front of you.
Works for me. Did I understand, and maybe it's my misunderstanding, does JAM own all the property from Clayton and Lambert?
I need to be sworn in. I can take
Thank
that
you.
question.
And name and address as you,
Sure.
as you approach, so please.
Adam McIntyre, 3621 Red Oak Drive, LaGrange, Kentucky.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would it make sense just go ahead and swear in the engineer now?
Yeah, I'll swear to
We swore him earlier.
So going back to that question,
First question.
So I need you on the mic here so we can capture on the record, please.
And the question was, do we own that ground currently? Yes, we do.
then my question is, why the cutout?
I tried to buy that, but they would not sell it to me.
That's not part of the.
It is not. Actually, we could bring the plan up, or if you all have it in front of you. So there's a weird notch in the backside, kind of on the north side of that piece of ground. If you go by there today, or if you remember just as recently as about a year and a half, about a year ago, there was a little structure right in the middle of that. There used to be, historically, there was a water tower there. So there are 5 or 6 piers that sit around there that used to be the water supply for Clayton and Lambert. There's also a little building there, and there's an easement that runs north to south that bisects this piece of ground. That used to be a substation to pull power then into the factory. So they wanted to maintain that that little electrical building, although the building doesn't have to be there. It's actually a vault right now. But they wanted to maintain that area for their own access. So I would love to have it because it made for a very difficult plan here. This is a challengingly shaped site, but they currently own it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, further questions? Mr. Douglas.
Going back to what you just said, there were how many wells there that you know of?
But I think there's two
Two
vaults
wells,
there.
2 vaults. Have they filled those in?
Yeah, they have a metal cover on them. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But they haven't been filled in?
No, they're active.
There water in there?
I believe they're electrical vaults.
Electrical vaults?
Are they both water? Here's the engineer. I'm going to let him take.
It's actually.
I don't own it, so I haven't really, been up in
Yeah,
there.
they're water vaults, and it's actually still runs some of their fire service for the building.
Exactly. I remember those being there, and I'm not going to testify, but my concern is that it's so close to this outdoor playing area. Has that been inspected for safety?
Not that I know of.
No concerns on your part?
We have it fenced completely away, so you cannot get through there.
So you'll have a
Yes,
privacy or,
absolutely. All the way around it.
and you don't know if there's any deteriorations of those vaults?
As we move forward in the construction plan process, we are going to have to relocate some of the fire service that runs out of there. It actually runs through the property now that gets to the building. Like I said, that was part of the contract with Clayton Lambert when they purchased it. We're going to have to do some reconfiguring of their fire service lines that specifically run out of those vaults.
Okay. I do have some follow-up. Do you mind?
Keep going.
Why the change from I-2 to C3? You could have an eating establishment of any kind in I-2. So explain to me the justification why to C3? Why a zoning map amendment?
I believe so.
So there was some two-part answer, and I don't, again, we're talking more than a year ago at this point. There was some discussion with staff about an appropriate zoning designation, and C3 was ultimately decided to be the appropriate designation on this one. But as a practical matter as well, there's also certain permissible uses. For example, to the extent anyone wants to call this an indoor sport facility of some kind, that is a permissible use under C3, and I don't believe it's actually under I2. So there was some discussion about the type of venue that it might be. And again, at one point, we were talking about the initial proposal being different than what the current proposal is. And at that point, it was a lot more, again, on the brewery component that was going to be housed there. And that part is not, again, an existing or is not part of the proposal now. So some of this is a legacy of what the original design was, but it's still consistent with ultimately the development plan. And that's why we're here, is to ensure that we do have the appropriate zone and we can move forward with that, whether it is a permissible use or a contingent use of some kind.
Well, permitted use under I-2 is eating establishment of any kind. Conditional use would be sports arena or amusement park under I-2. Sure. I'm just trying to figure out, is there another reason, because you're trying to get around some of the maximum lot coverage, setbacks? I don't know what that was worked out between.
And again, from
staff.
our perspective, it was simply a discussion we had at the outset about what the proposal was going to be, and the determination made, working again with staff a year and a half ago, was that C3 would have been the appropriate designation. And so we're just continuing to move forward with that and to continue to maintain it as an appropriate designation for that purpose.
So,
And I don't mean to put the staff on the spot, by the way. That's not intended to do that, other than to say part of it was a collaborative effort, and that's why we're doing this.
so let me ask Mr. Fisher. Would this establishment fit into I-2, but different parameters?
I mean, based off of what you just said, I mean, eating establishments of any kind would fit in I-2. I do not remember, because that was a long time ago, our conversations on how we came to C3, and that was obviously my predecessor that sort of initiated probably that thought. And I think, if I can remember correctly, is because of the multitude of uses that it was. Because at the time, I believe there was bowling alley component, there was roller skating component, there was eating establishment, there was a brewery, there was a coffee shop. I mean, it's changed multiple times. So I believe that based on my memory, which is slipping in my older age, that was the reason behind kind of going to the C3.
But apparently the plan has changed.
This is correct.
So,
But that wouldn't also preclude them from, other than that stipulation, of having to come before the commission and ask for the development plan approval, and then potentially any other waivers that they could have. It necessarily wouldn't preclude them from being here before us today.
okay. I'll reserve any other questions at this time.
Fair enough. Further questions? Ms. Kraus?
What is the capacity of this facility?
In terms of a daily or peak, hourly?
People, yeah, for the maximum capacity.
I don't have that in front of me. There is a code determination based on the occupancy of that gives us a natural occupancy of that. I don't have that in front of me. It's something I could do.
So was the parking just figured out based on the amount of space you had there?
The parking, yes, is a component of the size of the building, then what's required per the use, and there's a calculation that drove that number.
Okay.
Yes. And architecturally, it's a little bit different in terms of the size of the building and what the uses are, but the parking is definitely driven by that.
Okay. Further questions? Mr. Falvey?
Just got one of Mr. Fisher. Is it considered a down zoning from industrial to business?
That would be correct.
So they're going really for a down zoning, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's what's my thought.
Ms. Nasser?
So a couple questions. What are the potential hours of operation?
So that's still a little under discussion. Obviously, depending on the outcome of some of this. But with the pickleball component, some of those folks do like to get there early, and some of them like to play late. So if we were looking at we have somebody that's already sworn in. You mind if I?
Sure.
Mind if I
absolutely.
ask? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah,
That's
no,
right.
That's great.
So earliest hours of operation.
7 a.m.
Come closer to the mic, please. Thank
7
you.
a.m. to offer the early bird opportunity. I think one of the things with my background being in nursing, and I have a very close relationship with many senior leaders and physicians at Baptist. One of the big things that I've kind of gotten feedback from EMT, paramedics, and nurses is that there's a third shift component of employees that work third shift and don't have anything to do that like engages health and activity. So what I'd like to do is kind of bridge a gap there with a night shift league. Like if we had pickleball leagues, maybe we had like an evening league after everybody went home, and then maybe like an 8:30, 9:30, pickleball league that might go to like 11 approximately or so.
And just trying to forethink here, pickleball's great now, but it looks like there's 5, potentially 6 pickleball courts, which is a
Actually,
good.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
So, again, and Matt's very pickleball forward, given his business. He's a manufacturer of those, here in the area. What we have talked about as a group, though, is these have to be multi-purpose. Absolutely have to be multi-purpose. So, my 3 kids actually just graduated from OC. They went to high school right across the street. And I'll come to your answer too, but just to clarify as well, JAMP in our name is just the partners that own the ground. It's Jim, Adam, Max, and Paul. So I'm the A in JAMP. One of my partners is Paul. He's the P. He lives less than a mile from here too. Lives right on 393. So 2 of us live out here, and the other 2 live in Louisville. I know there was a question about, or something raised about maybe being incorporated in Texas. We're all right here. So that's JAMP. We bought this ground years ago because we have kids here at the high school. And actually the only regret I have is that, and my kids remind me of this all the time, is that this wasn't open enough, early enough in their high school career to actually be able to play and work here. So ask your question one more time here.
So future use plan of the pickleball.
So again, not knowing really what is going to be popular in years to come. The beautiful thing about a lot of these courts is they're multi-purpose. So I grew up, I'm a child of the late 70s and 80s. We all like to roller skate. Well, what can you do on an empty court sometimes? Sometimes you can roller skate. For the moms and parents that have the littlest tots, they can run big wheels in some of these areas. We can play volleyball in here. 2 courts make up a really nice half basketball court. So we know that there's things that are underserved out here in Oldham County that people would like to actually be able to use. So the pickleball courts are the vehicle today to be able to have this space, but it's very multi-purpose. So I also do want to bring up, I know you all get this mailer. Everybody seen what's happening in Oldham County? So the September 24 issue. Top 5 community needs. Number 1, positive teen activities. So that's why we're here. That's why I bought the ground, that many years ago. It was really to put something out here that I would like to be at. So there's a food and beverage component. There's a games component. I'm not a big professional sports player. I prefer to, more obscure things like a pickleball or bowling or skating or something like that. I think this area has been underserved. That's why we're here, is to put that kind of thing in front of the community.
Mr.
Chairman. I'm sorry.
We'll give
I had
Mr.
a
Finney, then we'll
follow-up.
come right back to you,
I
okay?
had a follow-up on that.
Okay, go right ahead. Hang on, Mr. Finney.
I was just wondering, I didn't hear the hours for the coffee part. I think I heard pickleball, but there was a question about the hours. Coffee's not going to start till 7 either? Is that the intention?
I would probably gauge that around 7:30, 8, something like that.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Finney?
Is there any room in this plan for changing of the size or style of the building? Because if you take the 10-foot requirement out here on this one waiver It also kind of removes the waiver that we need for the impervious surface. In other words, we'd move this back 10 feet off this waiver for the right, what would they call the easement waiver. You'd also then have your impervious surface waiver taken out. Is there any adjustment could be made in the building, in other words, so you could gain this without these waivers?
There's always room for adjustment. However, I'm also the architect on the project here. Back to Ms. Nasser's question about what are the different uses of this. The building on the right was actually sized for a potential future use. Let's say pickleball does fall out of favor and I need to put something else in here. The building is actually sized to be able to fit full-size bowling lanes in, so I might swap one change for the next. That's unfortunately a little outside of our initial financial ask here at this time. Bowling lanes are very expensive, but I like to bowl. I'd love to have those in here, but that's why the building is as deep as it is. If I had a little bit more square footage, I would be able to do that and make those waivers go away, but unfortunately, the building on the right is the size that I need it to be to hit a minimum standard for being able to have a future use. It's tough being a developer and trying to guess all of the different things that the residents of the county may or may not like. So trying to be as flexible as possible seemed to make the most sense here for the way we laid this out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, further questions? You can. I've got one if I may go first. All right, so question about the parking spaces. We have a minimum required of 84 and proposed at 93. Additional 9 over the required minimum. And I'm going to make the assumption, I hope you guys can confirm that those are considered necessary for your business model.
Yes.
Okay, so without them, what is the impact to two of the waiver requests? One for the number of traffic islands and 2 for the coverage of impervious space.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you clarify, when you say without them, what do you mean by that?
If you went down to the minimum parking spots from this plan and returned those to pervious space, what's the impact on the request for the parking islands and the request regarding impervious coverage?
So assuming for the sake of discussion, all other considerations off the table, as a practical matter, of course, the reduction in the number of parking spaces could theoretically be configured, and we were talking about this before, could theoretically be configured so the waiver is a non-issue, right? It's not required. For example, again, I don't want to offer this up necessarily. One of the things we talked about is if you had, even if you change the number of spaces in between the island size, for example, but if you removed some of the parking spaces and reconfigured, and again, I'm saying this not being the architect or engineer, of course, but as a practical matter, if you reduce the number of spaces, you might be able to, and I'll let Mr. McIntyre speak more to this, be able to configure it so that the waiver is a non-issue, right? Because we're only talking about 3 spaces over what the plan says in terms of the waiver request anyway. So really is we're not talking about many parking spaces above what we can fit into the space without having to ask for a waiver in the first instance. So, but I'll let Adam talk a little more about that.
Just to add to that, ironically, we the first plans that we had here, our discussions with staff and Mr. Urban, were always about parking and having enough. And the program has ebbed and flowed here over the last 2 years almost. I would hate to lose the spaces since the drivers of the initial conversations were, you need more, you need more, you need more. So I think I would be remiss if I came in here and said I would just like to give them up. Sure. I do think it's a valid request here. Any place like this is going to have peak operation times and then not. What's the old saying is, you don't build a church for Easter Sunday, but, at times I would love to, as a business owner, I would love to see the lot full. For the vast majority of time, it's not going to be. If I had to lose them, It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not a hill I'm going to die on, but I do think the extra 3 spaces give us a bit more flexibility.
Thank you. All right, Ryan, you're up.
All right, my question wasn't near that good, so you should have let me go first. So my question is, and so you mentioned the pickleball hours, and then you mentioned the coffee hours, and so I know the one gentleman testified that pickleball is not really designed for the kind of after softball game crowd where they sit around and drink. What about food and beverage service? If pickleball starts at 7, will that be something you all envision not opening until later, or what are the thoughts there? And I'm just thinking during school hours, what?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I would say that a little of that is TBD with demand. However, there would probably be an early component to this and then a more robust component where everything is online and then a scaling back. You know, it also comes down to staffing, you know, and what can it afford. So I would think in the morning there might be a play here where if it's early pickleball leagues, nothing else is open at that point. I mean, no one's in there. No one's getting a full meal or anything like that. They're not there to play any of the outdoor games. They're there very specifically. Again, it would be like the model at the Y. You have your early birds, and you've got your folks that linger longer in the middle of the day, and then you've got some late night folks as well.
All right. And then another question is, and this is just something that's come up in discussion with some individuals in the community, as to whether or not your plans will have a stamp from a Kentucky certified professional. I was just wanting you all to confirm that if approved, that at the time of engineering phase, building plan approval, that those plans will be stamped by a Kentucky certified professional.
I'm a licensed Kentucky architect. I will be stamping the plans on behalf of our company. And
Civil engineer, we're licensed in Kentucky. We also have a registered landscape architect in Kentucky.
All right. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Further questions, Commission? Mr. Douglas.
I guess KYDC has already authorized the entrance to this business off of 393, or you're going to have to request an encroachment permit.
During the
Come closer to the mic, please.
Technical
Thank
review
you.
committee, we met with Mr. Silliman. We spoke to KYTC, had a couple different meetings with them, and they actually requested us to line the entrance up to the entrance from the school. We had it down sort of more towards the orthodontist office and sort of looping in from each end. And they were saying the best place would be lining it directly across from the school just for the turning and whatnot.
So is that noted on these plans?
If
I don't
you see just on the south side there, on the bottom of the page, the radius. I'm sorry. Just right here where this little radius does this and this little radius here. Yeah. This is actually the center of the entrance to the school.
Okay. I saw that, but it didn't show me where that was.
Yeah, I
was
probably need to
lined up.
extend those lines out a little bit and call it out as school entrance. Yes, sir.
So I'm still hung up on one thing. The I-2 and the C3. I'm trying to get to that justification why you're needing it because of you're saying in your testimony that it was due to, I believe that you stated it was physical changes in the site, correct?
In conjunction with, and I don't know, Mr. Fisher had his hand up. I didn't know if he was also, were you going to say something as well? Oh, there was some discussion. So, yes, in addition, obviously, with consultation with staff about this, but I don't want to speak for them in that context. So I'll step back and let Ms. Barge speak if that's also what she's going to talk.
So something our wonderful county engineer brought up was the setbacks in I-2 would make it kind of prohibitive for them to build anything on that lot with the size of the lot. So the minimum front yard setback for I-2 is 100 feet for structures, side yard 35 feet, rear yard 25 feet. I will say their maximum impervious surface is up to 90%, so that would help them, but they wouldn't be able to really build anything on that lot based on the lot size with those setbacks. So or I believe that's the case. They can clarify if they would be able to meet setbacks of 100 feet for front yard.
We would not be able to. Correct.
And you only own the 2.23 acres?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I've asked Chuck if I could get more, but it's not available at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Douglas, anything further? All right, anyone else? All right. Well, you sure can. Thank you for interjecting.
Barry Baxter, Oldham County Attorney. My assistant, Mr. Combs, has a meeting in Crestwood in 9 minutes that he drives very fast, but not that fast, hopefully, because he's going to obey the law. So I'm going to let him take a break from you. But I did want to give you all one little bit of history that you got to kind of go back in the Wayback Machine. Before I was a county attorney, I represented Dr. Ahrens, who built the orthodontic clinic. I don't know, is it adjacent to this piece of property? So, and Dr. Aaron ran into these same types of issues. So Clayton and Lambert is, I think, actively marketing outlots on this piece of property with the understanding that those outlots, when they're zoned industrial, nobody's going to be able to use them as industrial because of the setback limitations. And these are the same discussions that we had with Dr. Ahrens. I'm not sure that using an orthodontic office was a permitted use of that piece of property, but you know, we had those same staff discussions. And in fairness to Mr. Fisher, he probably wasn't even here at the time. And Mr. Urban guided a lot of these discussions about how these things proceeded. So in fairness to the applicant, I mean, they're struggling a little bit to answer your questions, but I will tell you, based upon my experience with Mr. Urban very often, when you came in with something, he made suggestions, but in fairness, they really weren't suggestions. It was, this is the way that you need to get this done. And that was what the discussion was with Dr. Ahrens when he was doing his project. We had a lot of these same issues, KYTC and things like that that came up. And but you know, the use of this property, what they have presented to you, pro or con, I mean, they can't do what they want to do if the zoning is not changed. So, you know, that's one of the things that needed to be clarified a little bit, is that there's no way that they were going to be able, with the setbacks, unless Clayton and Lambert sold them the warehouse property, for example, which I understand is not for sale. And while I think the appearance could be improved a little bit, it is still operational. So. But that I just needed to kind of give you all that history from my time before being county attorney.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. And all I wanted him to do was say that I-2 does not fit the plans, the developmental plan that he has for C3 because of the setbacks and the limitations of the limited space of this property. And they put it on record. Yep. All I was told was there were 3 reasons on the LU13-1, LU1-33, and B1-1-2. And one of them was encourage development priority in the future land use. But I needed that justification in my mind. I don't know about anybody else, just in my mind, to meet KRS 100.123. That's all. Yep. And he put it on record.
And you know,
unfortunately, and you emphasized it too.
Well, and unfortunately, this has been one of these things. I mean, they said it's been a year since they had the TRC, and you know, people don't remember. So, but anyway, I felt like we were kind of getting off here about what was going on, and I felt like I needed to, you know, remind everybody about what happened with Dr. Aaron's facility. So, Mr. Combs, you need to go.
Here. The boards that I generally sit on, they have a set script to follow, and we've kind of gotten off base here today as far as I'm concerned, as far as fairness to all parties that are here. we're supposed to make our decision based on the testimony that is presented as we go through this. And we should have opened the floor open again to discuss other issues. In opposition, I think you're going to have to give opposition some more time in this. We haven't really been keeping time, but I just want to make that comment. And then I'm sorry I need to go, but I thought maybe you want to hear my 2 cents worth. Whatever. Anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tate.
That thing starts rolling on me. I'll leave this up here.
We haven't even gotten to rebuttal yet, so.
Yeah. You want the coat on?
You're right. It's 50 degrees out there. Oh. I haven't gained that much weight, I can tell you that.
I have.
See you, folks.
All right, Mr. Baxter, in light of the observations that were just shared with us, do we have a moment to bring opposition to the podium to ask for any additional input at this moment? Would that be appropriate? We are in the questioning phase at the moment.
I think that would be appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hazelton?
Well, that was an interesting discussion, I think, but it is I2, and I think is an abbreviation for industrial. So we're looking at an industrial zoning rather than a business zoning. A concern I have with the comments about Dr. Ahrens is twofold. One is her traffic pattern is completely different than this traffic pattern. She has patients coming in, they're going to be there for a while, and then they're going to leave. What you've got with the entertainment center is you've got constant flow coming and going of traffic in that area. The other and last thing I would mention is we've come across scenarios where we have set precedents. And Dr. Ahrens may be a precedent where, okay, because that happened, then that opens up the whole corridor around Clayton Lambert for those types of businesses, or an interpretation of what types of businesses are suitable rather than what the regulations call for and the standards that those regulations call for. So, that's really all I would have to contribute, I think, at this point with the recent discussion. We're still looking at major issues on 393 with traffic flow.
Thank you, Mr. Hazelton. Mr. Swansburg, anything to add in that space? We are somewhere in the middling piece of our procedure now, so,
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'll be very brief. There's just a couple of points because we've talked a lot already, I think, about some of the points that were raised as concerns. But one of the things I do want to just reiterate to this body, we talk about transportation and traffic issues. And what I would like to submit is that the numbers that we are talking about, and whether they're 2003, 2024, the number of site visits, for example, the number of cars that are going to be on the road, it's all based upon available data. And there are individuals who look at that data, and the applicant in this case paid for an assessment to find out whether or not what the visits might be, for example, and whether that's going to warrant a more extensive study of some kind. And at the end of the day, what we're talking about is the data that's available to us. And anecdotally, we can talk all day long about what might or might not happen in the context of certain hours and everything else. And that's based upon all of our experiences. But that's also done on different days with different circumstances. All we can do is look at the data and the actual information that's available to us. And in this case, I would submit that the evidence shows ultimately that it's not going to be a prohibitive development, and that the Transportation Cabinet has at least partially signed off, and there is still much to do as part of this. And the county and the developer will have to work together to actually make this a reality at the end of the day. But the information that has been given to us suggests that this project is an appropriate use. It does fit the infrastructure that is there, whether 393 is built in 2026 or 2056. And so that's all we can do at this point is look at what's in front of us and the information available to us and make that determination. And I would submit that that is what ultimately you all do in your role, and you all do it very well. And so that is the information that we've been able to hand to you all and talk about that. I would submit that's the information upon which this body should make a decision. Again, one last point on this. We've asked for 3 waivers. So the county in its infinite wisdom has decided parameters for certain developments, and they put that in a comprehensive plan, and then they put that in regulations. And it's to fulfill certain requirements to, again, promote the health, safety, and welfare of the individuals who reside in this state. But the county has also, in its infinite wisdom, provided a component for individuals to seek variances and waivers of those regulations if a proposal warrants it, because it also recognizes that sometimes the rigidity of a comprehensive plan or a regulation does not lend itself to an appropriate development. And all we're asking at this point is for this body to grant us waivers in a manner in which is consistent with the comprehensive plan and ultimately county regulations, county ordinances. And the final point on that is I don't think, if I can be frank, that the actual waivers we are requesting in the grand sense are overly burdensome or overly extravagant. We're talking about, again, 3 parking spaces in terms of a parking waiver. We're talking about leaving an existing buffer there because of existing easements that are already in place. And we're talking about a 4.9% increase above the maximum impervious surface capacity, not a major distinction between 65% and say even up to 90% for an I2 industrial space that could theoretically be paved over. And so again, I would just ask you all to think about, again, the ultimate requests that we're making here in the grand sense we would submit are not overly significant. They're relatively small, but it will get us to a point where we can put together that plan that we think ultimately is going to benefit significantly the citizens of this county. And so I just want to make sure I made those points in response to comments that were made, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your indulgence, and certainly, again, always appreciate the time of this body.
Thank you, Mr. Swansburg. All right, commissioners. So we're going to find our way back into the end of the questioning phase, which we have not officially concluded with yet. Anybody have questions left after the discussion that we've been through? All right, if there are none, we will now move into the rebuttal from the applicant. Mr. Swansburg, if you have anything in addition to what you just shared.
Mr. Chairman, I've actually covered, I think, most of the points, if not all of them. I, again, appreciate the time.
And Mr. Hazelton, anything on your part in terms of rebuttal?
Well, I'm not going to take a long time either because you had really good discussion and good questions. But I'll lend my comments to 3 points that were made here just now. One is you've got to decide is an appropriate development for this site. And I clearly think the answer is no. There's too much going on too little with too many questions remaining. That it complies with the comprehensive plan, as I understood it, and regulations with these waivers. It doesn't comply with the comprehensive plan. It does with the waivers, or may with the waivers, depending on what they get into. And then I think the last is the plan itself. And is it an appropriate plan for this area? And I think it's an appropriate plan, but not for this location. Thank you.
Anything in final as well? That's the next phase that we have. Anything in final statement from you?
I think my final statement would be I'm recommending that the commission deny the amendment change and the development plan for reasons I've stated.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Swansburg, your final.
I've more or less made a final statement, Mr. Chairman, but the last thing I would just punctuate this is that this body's got a pretty significant amount of information in front of it, both in terms of what has been provided already, as well as what has been discussed today. And I appreciate all of the questions. I appreciate the comments, by the way, and the concerns that are raised, because again, that is what this particular applicant has done for the last year is listen to and try to incorporate as best as possible concerns that have been raised by the community in some form or fashion to make what it believes is a well-rounded, thoughtful, and ultimately good plan that comports with the county's regulations. So what I would just conclude by saying is, again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for all the questions you've asked. We would respectfully ask again, for the record, that this body approve the zoning map amendment, that it approve the 3 waivers that we have discussed extensively, as well as the development plan for this project. And we certainly appreciate any further discussion you might have, Mr. Chairman. That is the balance of my time, and I'll be happy to sit down and stop talking.
Thank you, Mr. Swansburg. Okay. Ryan?
All right. I will attempt to unmuddy the muddy waters by looking at these various motions that will have to be made. So I'll just take each of these individually. So the first one we're going to be looking at on the back of page 1 of your staff report is the motions and findings for the zoning map amendment. So this is a zoning map amendment request to go from I-2 zoning to C3 zoning. And so you have to look at that in regards to whether or not this is an appropriate zoning request change, as well as the compliance with the goals and objectives of our comprehensive plan. So you've got motions to either approve or deny on the following page, and that would be a recommendation to Oldham County Fiscal Court in this sense. So that's the first one.
All right.
I don't think you want me to go through the rest yet or we'll really get confused, so.
All right, Mr. Baxter.
So we talk about this, Mr. Chairman, every time we have a zone change. Obviously, you all are making a recommendation to the fiscal court one way or the other. The fiscal court has the ultimate say as to whether or not to approve the zoning map amendment. I will say sometimes they get a little bit confused and start to get into areas that involve the development plan. But that is within your all's purview as to whether or not you approve the development plan if the zoning map amendment goes forward.
All right, and commissioners, so now's the time to think about the zoning map request and the motion that comes with it. And I want to indulge just for a second here and offer Mr. Baxter's counsel, if anyone wishes to have a moment, a break, to consult with Mr. Baxter before you put a motion on the floor. If you do not wish to do so, I'm glad to go ahead and entertain a motion, but that opportunity is present for you if you wish. Mr. Hampton? Please.
Concerning PZ 24-023, I'm going to move to deny, and I'm going to use points B and C. The existing zoning classification given to the property is appropriate, and the proposed zoning inappropriate because of the location and proximity to Oldham County High School. And C, there have not been major changes of economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan and which have substantially altered the character of such area in that would warrant zoning change.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. Mr. Baxter?
You have an adequate motion, Mr. Chairman?
Very well. Motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Mr. Marsh? Yes, sir. Thank you. Discussion? Crickets. All right, we'll move into a roll call vote. Ms. Edgar?
Will you review the yes and no and the denial?
Thank you. Right, so this is a motion to deny. And a motion to deny now, if you give it a yes vote, you are voting for a denial. If you vote otherwise, okay, everybody with us? Clear? Thank you, Ms. Nasser. All right, Ms. Edgar?
Ms. Davis?
No.
Mr. Douglas?
No.
Mr. Elder?
No.
Ms. Kraus?
No.
Mr. Falvey?
No.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
No.
Mr. Winters?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
No.
Ms. Nasser?
No.
Ms. Walzer?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion to deny has failed on a vote of 8 to 5. Mr. Baxter.
So at this point, Mr. Chairman, you do need another motion, either to deny or recommend approval of the zoning map amendment. The matter has not been resolved.
Thank you. All right, Commissioners, floor is open again. This is on the zoning map amendment.
I'll take a run at it.
You're up.
As to docket PZ 24-023, I move that we recommend approval to the Oldham County Fiscal Court based on the objectives that the program is designed to accept LU-1-3-1, LU-1-3-3, and B1-1-2. Also based on existing development in the area and on evidence and testimony given today, I think this development is appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Elder. Mr. Baxter?
I think you have an adequate motion, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Ms. Jones, thank you. Discussion. Back to the roll call vote. Ms. Edgar?
Mr. Marsh?
No.
Ms. Walzer?
No.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Mr. Winters?
No.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
No.
Mr. Finney?
No.
Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Ms. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion for recommendation of zoning map amendment approval is passed on a vote of 8 to 5. All right, Mr. Fisher.
All right, now we'll move in to the waivers, and we'll take each of these individually. So the first waiver we're going to look at is the required 10-foot vehicular use area perimeter landscape buffer. So that minimum size is required to be 10 feet in width. You've heard evidence and testimony of the need for a waiver of that 10-foot width. So on page, I think this is page 3, maybe. You have motions to approve and deny that waiver, and the potential conditions of approval on this is that waivers shall only apply to the plan reviewed at the December 10th, 2024 Planning Commission public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Mr. Baxter, anything to add?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, Commissioners, floor is open. Ms. Kraus.
For docket PZ 24023, I recommend that we waive the 10 feet width due to the hardships of physical condition of that particular location. And that it would only apply to the plan reviewed today at the December 10th meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Kraus. Mr. Baxter?
We have an adequate motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Mr. Falvey, thank you. Discussion. We'll move into roll call vote. Ms. Edgar?
Mr. Finney,
No.
Mr. Hampton,
No.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Winters,
Yes.
Mr. Elder,
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Nasser,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Walzer,
No.
Mr. Marsh.
No.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion to approve the waiver for the vehicular use area has been approved on a vote of 9-4. Mr. Fisher?
All right, the next waiver is a portion of the parking lot for required interior landscape areas for the vehicular use areas, which the requirement is 1 island for every 10 parking spaces. As they noted in evidence and testimony, there's a couple places in that parking lot where they're asking for some additional requirements, and so the waiver request to waive the requirement in those 2 areas. You do on that next page, I believe we're at page 4. There are sample motions to approve or deny those waivers. And once again, the potential conditions of approval would be that that waiver shall only apply to the plan reviewed at the December 10th, 2024 Planning Commission public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. All right, commissioners, ball's in your court. Time for motions. Ms. Nasser?
I'll jump in there. Whoop, lost my thing. Docket PZ 24023. Motion to approve the waiver of the maximum impervious surface in order to provide the adequate parking needed. I approve the waiver request for 4.9% increase.
Wait. Let's
Sorry,
back up.
wrong one?
We're on the islands.
Sorry, I got to go back to the islands.
Okay.
So, again, on the motion to, the waiver of a portion of the required interior landscape area to reduce that space, I propose approval of that in order to increase the parking so that there is adequate parking and so that it will align with the physical needs and conditions of the property that has been approved.
Thank you, Ms. Nasser.
I'd
Mr. Baxter? Oh,
I'd
go
like to
ahead.
also add the binding element that this applies to the plan reviewed today.
Thank you, Ms. Nasser. Mr. Baxter?
Ms. Nasser, would strict compliance with the regulations create an undue hardship because of the nature of this property?
Yes.
If you, with that addition, Mr. Chairman, we have an adequate motion.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. Okay, commissioners, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Mr. Falvey? Thank you. Discussion? Mr. Marsh?
One question. My math, or what I recall hearing, was this will free up 3 spaces total
Staff?
by making this waiver?
I believe that's what Mr. Swansburg testified as to. That would be 3 spaces.
And so that gets to the total of the 94, I believe, correct? That's what was presented? Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Douglas?
Mine was in the same line of questioning, but also reminding the question you asked about, was it necessary to have that many number of spaces?
Right.
And I'm not sure, well, I'll leave my opinion.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. Any additional discussion? All right, moving into roll call vote. Ms. Edgar?
Mr. Klingenfuss,
Yes.
Mr. Elder,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
No.
Ms. Nasser,
Yes.
Mr. Winters,
Yes.
Ms. Walzer,
No.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Finney,
No.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
No.
Mr. Hampton,
No.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the waiver for landscape area regarding the islands has passed on a vote of 8 to 5. All right, Mr. Fisher.
All right, and the last waiver request for you is of the required maximum impervious surface. That requirement is 65%. The applicant is asking for 69.9%, so they're asking for a waiver request of that 4.9% difference. Once again, motions to approve and deny in your staff packet. And as with the last two waivers, the potential conditions of approval would that be the waiver only applies to the plans considered here today at the December 10th, 2024 Planning Commission public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. All right, commissioners, floor is open for a motion.
I might as well just
Katie?
go back to my motion.
Okay, yeah, there you go. All right.
All right. With docket PZ-24-023, motion to approve the waiver request of maximum impervious surface to increase by 4.9%. I believe that the reduced impervious surface or the maximum required impervious surface and increasing that will allow for more adequate parking for the event center that is requested here today in order to provide the ability, it would create a hardship if additional parking was needed off-site for this property. This also includes the conditions of approval as stated by Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Ms. Vanessa. Mr. Baxter?
You have an adequate motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I've got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Mr. Falvey? Thank you. Discussion? All right, roll call vote. Ms. Edgar?
Mr. Elder,
Yes.
Ms. Walzer,
No.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Kraus,
Yes.
Mr. Finney,
No.
Mr. Hampton,
No.
Mr. Winters,
Yes.
Ms. Nasser,
Yes.
Mr. Marsh,
No.
Mr. Klingenfuss,
Yes.
Mr. Falvey,
Yes.
Mr. Douglas,
No.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the waiver for impervious surface addition has passed on a vote of 8 to 5. Okay, Mr. Fisher,
All right.
we're into the development plan now?
Yes, now the last one. So the last one being the development plan. Based on that evidence and testimony, you've got motions to approve and deny that development plan. This will include the proposed binding elements that are listed on, I have no idea what page number I'm on now, 6, I believe, if I can read that down on the bottom. And so those proposed binding elements were the approval only applies to the plans presented here today at the December 10th, 2024 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. There shall be no changes to the plan without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission and Engineers Office, and the plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements, and comply with all necessary easement restrictions at the time of construction plan approval. I would like to add one in that we typically put on these, and that's that a landscape and lighting plan shall be approved prior to construction plan submittal. That's one that we usually put on these, as long as the applicant is okay with that. And then I don't believe I heard any others in the course of evidence and testimony that we would need to add.
All right, commissioners. So, floor is open before. Please go ahead.
Mr. Swansburg, could you, just for the purpose of the record, there are the four binding elements proposed. Does your client accept those binding elements?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. All right, commissioners, floor is open for motion on the development plan. This is the preliminary development plan. Ms. Nasser, do I see you making that move?
We are making that move.
You are up.
All right. Regarding docket PZ-24-023, motion to approve the preliminary development plan based on the fact that it complies with the surrounding zoning area. It provides best use of the property as it exists, and complies with the zoning changes that were made today. I would also include the proposed binding elements 1 through 4 that were stated by Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Ms. Nasser. Mr. Baxter?
Ms. Nasser, do you agree that it also complies with the objectives of the comprehensive plan and the future land use map?
I do agree that it complies with the future land use map.
And Mr. Chairman, with those additions, we have an adequate motion.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. All right, commissioners, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Ms. Davis? Okay. Discussion? All right, Ms. Edgar, we will move into roll call vote.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Ms. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Nasser?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Winters?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Mr. Elder?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Klingenfuss?
Yes.
Ms. Walzer?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Edgar. And the motion to approve the preliminary plan is passed on a vote of 13-0.
Wow.
Oh, my, with no drama. All right. Mr. Fisher.
All right, other business. The extension of the comprehensive plan for a period of 1 year. So KRS 100.197 requires that the elements of our Oldham County comprehensive plan be reviewed once every 5 years. So that comprehensive plan was approved back in 2019, which, if we do our math correctly, means that in 2024, we should have looked at our comprehensive plan. With Jim Urban's retirement and then me taking over, that definitely wasn't something that any of us wanted to tackle in 2024. But we are looking at getting started with that actually right after this today, we'll be starting to kind of kick off, and that'll be about a year-long process next year of going through the comprehensive plan update. So what I would like to ask for the Planning Commission to do today is to just simply vote to extend that comprehensive plan, our current one, for the period of 1 year to put us through the end of 2025. So KRS does say that if the goals and objectives aren't proposed to be amended, essentially the Planning Commission has to approve, and it doesn't have to go to fiscal court unless the goals and objectives change. So I'm just requesting that you all adopt our current comprehensive plan for the period of 1 year with no changes to the goals and objectives, with a full review starting in January of next year, run until about probably October. So,
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Mr. Baxter, anything to add there?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioners, questions, discussion, motions?
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Davis?
I make a motion that we approve the 1-year extension to allow them the time to review the plan.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I have a motion on the floor. Second, Mr. Hampton. Thank you. Discussion? We can do this by voice vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, like sign. And motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Fisher.
And then just a few announcements to close with. We do have SRC committee on, study review committee on Thursday at 5, so hopefully those members can attend that. January meeting will be January 27th. I do believe we already have cases for that, so it'll be our normal meeting in January. And then I would like to introduce our new staff planner, John Hine, sitting in the front row next to Anna. He just started. He's been with us almost a week, so he's still here and he's still showing up to work, so that's a plus. So I'd like to welcome him. He is an Oldham County resident, lives in Westport, and has done great so far. I've already put him on short-term rentals, so that's one less thing that I have to worry about renewing all those. So welcome to the team, and feel free to say hi to him after the meeting. And then training in 2025. So I know you all know that KRS requires you all get 8 hours of training every 2 years. Typically, we've sort of done that after a meeting and we've talked about something and kind of classified as an hour. I really want to get to a point to where we can do individual specific classes for you all. And so starting in January, probably quarterly, I will put on other business that we will do a training after the meeting. I'll try to schedule it on days where I know we're not going to have a very long meeting. And we're going to look at, kind of specific things that you all will deal with, getting into our regulations, maybe entice our county attorney to come in and talk to you all about motion making, things of that nature. I'm going to have a local surveyor, our county surveyor, come in and just talk about what you all are looking at when he's got a plat in front of you, what all those little dots and points and solid lines and dotted lines mean, and things like that that'll hopefully help you all not have to necessarily just rely on YouTube to watch and get that training. It'll obviously be optional for you if you all want to stay after. I know you all have got things to do outside of this hearing. So I just wanted to let you all know that starting in 2025, look for those opportunities, which hopefully you all will like and will enjoy, and we'll all get some training in. I think that's all I've got.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. All right. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Please.
How long will those trainings last after
No longer than an hour. So.
All right. Additional questions? Anything else for the good of the cause? All right, guys. So here we are, right? Hope everybody has a Merry and safe Christmas. Look forward to seeing you after the new year. Those of you on SRC, sorry, see you Thursday. All right? Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you.